Un œil tout seul
An eye on its own
va pas pouvoir voir de lui-même.
won't be able to see by itself.
Un doigt tout seul va pas
A
pouvoir
finger on its
toucher
own won't be able
de
to
lui-même.
touch on it by itself, on its own.
Un corps tout seul ne peut pas fonctionner
A,
de
a
lui-même.
body can't function on its own.
Et même une seule cellule du corps
Even a
toute
single
seule
cell in the body
ne fonctionne pas d'elle-même.
doesn't function on its own.
Tout ce corps, c'est
All this body is
3 trillions, il paraît, d'atomes
3
environ. Je sais
billions
pas comment ils ont compté, mais
atoms. Don't know how they
Et-
counted that, but
100 000 milliards de cellules à peu près qui
100
fonctionnent en parfaite harmonie.
1,000 millions of cells functioning harmoniously together.
C'est le mental, quand il essaie de
So the mind, when it tries and
comprendre ça, il a du mal.
understand that, it's kind of stumbling.
Il y a un moment donné où même la déduction logique
There's a moment
suffit
where
pour
even
se
just
rendre compte qu'il y
logical
a une
deduction
conscience.
is enough to realize that there is a consciousness.
À un moment donné, vous êtes obligé d'arriver à la conclusion qu'il y a une conscience
You have to come to the conclusion that there is a consciousness that is transcendent behind every form.
Feuille, par exemple,
A single
ne
leaf,
peut pas se
for
faire,
instance,
sur un coup de dé, comme ça, par hasard.
can't happen
La moindre
randomly.
feuille d'un arbre, c'est
You know, a
impossible.
single leaf from a tree. That's impossible for it to happen randomly.
La moindre fonction automatique du corps ne peut pas se faire
Every single
sur un
function
coup
of
de
the
dé.
body can't. Well, this is no dice
J'avais lu
game.
quelque part qu'il y a
I read
une
somewhere
chance sur
that
10
there's
puissance
1 in 10
533
chance
pour
to the
qu'une
power of
protéine
533 for a
Ça laisse pas beaucoup de
protein
place au hasard.
to exist. Not much room for
Vous avez
randomness.
533 0, 10 puissance
533 zeros
zéros derrière le 10.
behind
Donc ça
the
fait une
10.
chance sur 10 avec 533
So-
0 derrière pour avoir voir une protéine.
to see one protein.
Donc croire qu'il y a encore un hasard, c'est pas très scientifique.
So to believe that there's hazard or randomness is not really credible.
À notre époque, la science et la spiritualité sont en train de converger. Donc c'est
Currently,
possible.
science and
pour ça, très
spirituality
particulier.
are converging, merging.
Mais en réalité, ça n'a jamais été séparé.
But the truth is, it's
la voie
never
des
been
sages
really
est une voie
separated.
extrêmement scientifique. C'est très précis.
The
Ce qui est enseigné
way,
depuis des
the
millénaires, c'est
sage's
très
way,
précis.
is very precise, quite scientific, really.
C'est basé sur l'observation
It is based on
empirique de
observation,
comment c'est.
empirical observation of things and how they are. If you read some texts, Sanskrit texts,
ils décrivent les choses telles qu'elles sont sans mettre
they
de
describe
fioriture, il y a pas de
things
poésie,
how they are
par
without
exemple, le corps
any kind
physique.
of poetry.
En yoga, on
You
appelle
know,
ça
like
le corps fait de
the
nourriture.
physical
C'est pas
body.
poétique.
They call it the body made of food. It's not really poetic.
Et aussi les sages, les scientifiques ont une posture de
Scientists have a posture of
sage. Pour voir un
sages
objet,
in a way,
il faut
because to be able to see an object, they use
l'observateur qui
observation.
Oui.
Donc c'est même c'est le principe.
It is the very principle that is
L'observateur
backward.
crée l'objet.
The observer create the
La
object.
révolution de ce qui a été vu en physique quantique. C'est
Oh yeah,
qu'ils se sont
that was
rendus
the
compte
very
que de
big
la manière
revolution
dont ils
with
observaient
quantum physics.
l'expérience
They've
changeait.
realized that the way they look at an experience, the
Des fois,
experience
quand on voit
changes.
dans les branches un peu considérées comme New Age et
So
ésotériques,
in some branches
ce que
called,
vous
you know, like
croyez se manifeste, mais en fait, c'est
as
hyper
New Age.
scientifique. C'est la même chose que qu'en physique quantique.
when they
on dit
say
que
what you see, you create, this is
l'observateur
actually
modifie
very
ce qu'il observe et
scientific.
c'est la réalité.
In science tells us that
Dès le moment
what you
où vous
observe,
allez avoir
you change it, whatever you observe.
croyance forte,
If you have a
y
strong
compris
belief,
surtout si elle est
especially
subconsciente,
if
surtout si
it's
elle est
subconscious,
très ancrée
very quite,
profondément,
you know,
ça va
anchored,
déterminer toute la
deeply
vie.
anchored in you, it's going to determine all your life.
Tout ce qui va suivre, selon comment
Everything that
en Inde,
will
on dit, as you
follow.
think, so you become.
In
Comme vous
India,
pensez,
you
même
say,
comme vous
how you
croyez, vous
think,
devenez,
so you
en fait.
become. So how you the way you think, you make it happen.
Donc, s'il y a des situations dans la vie qui
So
sont
if there's,
ou qui semblent conflictuelles ou qui
events
semblent faire comme des murs,
that appear to be
c'est pour vous inviter à voir dans votre système
appear
de
to be a
croyance
conflict
ce qui est faux, ce qui est
in
erroné.
your daily life. It's an invite for you to actually see that there's a strong belief that is wrong about you. Here's an example.
Donc, mais je vous prends un exemple d'une personne dont je me souviens. Une personne, par exemple, qui n'arrive pas du tout à réussir professionnellement quelque chose.
Can't achieve anything professionally, whatever she's trying and doing.
Par hasard.
How curious. It does speak to you.
Ça passe écho à toi comme par hasard.
Makes an echo for you or your people around you. How strange.
Et donc, la personne ne comprend pas quel que soit ce qu'elle met en place.
Person doesn't understand why it's not working, whatever she's trying.
Elle va voir quelqu'un
so she sees
un peu,
someone who's going to fiddle with her beliefs. So someone who's going to ask her questions.
Juste voir comment c'est, quoi.
Just questions about, how is it working, this whole thing?
On regarde dans le vécu personnel, qu'est-ce que tu as pu voir
let's have a look at
mis cette croyance en place parce que c'est une
your personal life, how this belief has been installed in you.
Une profession qui me convient
this belief that I can't have a good profession, something that I like and provide for myself.
Très intéressant.
And right there, this person, we realize that
sa mère est très triste.
Her mother is very sad because
et du coup, elle-même est très triste pour sa mère.
She's very sad for her mother too.
Vers l'âge de 5 ans, au début,
when she was quite young, around 5, she used to know very well her father because he was actually making, breakfast for her in the morning. So she knew him quite very well. But suddenly, her dad actually starts a business, and he doesn't see his daughter anymore. And so both the mother and daughter feel abandoned by the dad that is going to work. So what kind of belief has it created for this little girl? Created the idea that work is bad. Work has taken my dad away, and it's taken joy away from me. So do you think that with such a belief that work is bad, do you think that she's gonna find a good work, something that she's gonna feel okay with? And it's really subconscious most of the time. Well, not most of the time, it's actually always subconscious and always. And I've said that again and again. Those subconscious beliefs come from something from the childhood, and that has influenced us before 7 or 8 years old. Is usually when happens. So why am I talking about that, which is quite a human level? Because I keep saying that we are absolute consciousness and we're not the human. Because usually, if we're not at peace with the story, usually there's a duality that is so strong that we can't realize unity. For instance,
pour reprendre l'exemple de ce matin, par exemple,
if we're not at peace with the fact that consciousness can play with the idea of humans that enjoy eating animals, because it is an experience as another, not bad nor good. If we're not at peace with that, so there's a duality, so we can't realize the unity behind it. That's impossible. As long as there's something in you that wants to point out, like, my father, that bastard who went away, or blah, blah, blah. That's not, it's not possible to realize. In India, they say if you point at something, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So the universe is telling you, look back at yourself. You know, it's like we point there 3 times there, but we also blame the sky, heaven. Okay, that's actually true. How many humans say that, you know, in front of a suffering experience, like a painful, aching experience, such, what a bastard God, and if there was really a God, he wouldn't allow that. It is very logical, yes. Yeah. There's a logic behind it, yeah. Again, that's just because we have ideas about how, for instance, love should be. Love shouldn't be, shouldn't make you suffer. Really? Okay. How many moms who love their children and let their children do something, you know, like wrong, like, and let their children hurt themselves just for them to learn something. So it's not necessarily a lack of love. There's a lot of sages. When we guide people, we can see that people want to actually experience something in particular, and that is love. And we know it's going to go wrong for them, but we have to let them do that. That is love. In this quest, I've heard that before. If it makes sense that if something is screaming within you, you know, it creates a duality. But problematic there is that we don't know how to clean up. Reason why I was more sensible to I do put hopes in discourses like you'll never be able to clean all the suffering and the millions of other lives. It's never going to be enough if you go that way. So what would be your position on that, your input on that? Do you see my question? I would have preferred not to hear about that. I'm not telling you to actually clean up all the karmic, stories and lives. What I'm trying to say is every knot that you encounter or events in life, and usually there's not so many of them for the little me. So every knot reveals a present behind it. It is an invite, this knot is an invite to liberate yourself. And the last one is really this idea of me seeking, this feeling of being lost, like to be on this earth and what am I doing here? What's the point? Sometimes it's this nostalgia of this lost heaven. It's usually the central, the core knot, core tension. When we start, cleaning up all the tensions and desires, and which is why we invite to go through meditation, for instance, in India. But there's still this existential knot, this tension. So I'm here, I'm in this emptiness, this nothing. The mind can't grasp anything. Yet, what am I doing here?
Ça, c'est bien une question
And
du
actually,
mental.
it is such a question from the
C'est
mind.
que le faire lui-même
This
est le nœud du
doing
problème.
is
Très
actually the
souvent, quand le
knot,
mental pose une
is the
question
problem.
pour se libérer,
When the mind
la
asks
question est
itself a
erronée déjà.
question to liberate itself, well, the question is
Quand est-ce que je vais atteindre
erroneous.
l'éveil, comme je disais hier,
When am
la
I going to
question est fausse
reach
de base.
awakening? Well, the
Puisque
question is erroneous.
vous prenez
Because
pour vrai et pour
you
acquis le fait
take
qu'il y a un temps.
for true and for
Dès le moment où vous prenez
for
pour
real
vrai
the fact that there's a
ça,
time and that it's
vous
going
faites
to
un matrix
happen,
direct.
and so you get caught up
Puisque c'est la
by
notion de
this
temps elle-même
false
qui crée la
belief.
souffrance.
This notion of time actually creates suffering, aching.
Je peux poursuivre.
Oui.
May I continue?
Il me semble que l'écho que me renvoie le mental quand
I feel like there's an echo coming from my mind when I try and go within in this.
Pourquoi ce serait à l'intérieur?
Just why would it be inside?
franchement, parce que tout le monde nous indique d'aller plutôt.
Well, because everyone says that we should go inside. Clearly, really,
Je revendique même que j'aurais pas eu l'idée tout seul.
I wouldn't have thought of that myself.
Tu revendiques même que c'est une idée d'ailleurs.
You even revendicate it's an idea, to be honest. Yes, absolutely, probably.
Je sais pas.
I don't know.
Plus jeune,
When I was younger, I was
je voulais aller voir ça.
looking outside and seeking outside.
Quel ordre, mais j'ai dû recevoir la proposition. Le royaume de Dieu est au-dedans de vous, donc on va.
I must have heard something like the heavenly kingdom is within you, so it's not my fault. Seriously.
Et de fait, j'y crois.
And I do believe it.
Donc j'essaye ça.
So I try that.
Et moi, quand on partage cette question, qu'est-ce que je fais là?
And when I'm asked this question, what am I doing here? I'm not asking that when I'm running, but I'm rather do that when I'm meditating,
Quand les choses sont un peu retombées.
or when things are kind of settling.
Et alors, qu'est-ce que je fais là?
And so, what am I doing here?
Je sais qu'elle me tient à cœur.
And I want to ask this question that is dear to me. This is the one about boredom.
J'avoue, j'ai été interpellé par
I was
la formulation que tu as eue ce matin, qui est peut-être tout à fait pertinente.
moved by what you said this morning.
La stratégie
This strategy from the ego, the mind,
que tu as proposé, c'est je m'ennuie.
is the one you were saying about I'm bored. This to yes, it's not my fault. I'm here and I'm bored, and what can I do about that? But you might be right. It might be just, a trick from the mind, but I don't know how to ask myself. Because it really touches me. That's an existential knot that you need to look at, because I'm bored is not enough. Look at the nature of this boredom. The nature of this boredom comes from an idea of unsatisfaction, necessarily. Are we agreeing on that? Something should appear. Yes, you're bored because you'd want something else. Are we agreeing? Something else than this calm. I'm actually fighting against all this agitation. I touch this calm, and then this calm is not enough. You'd like for something else to appear later on? No, right now? Right now would be good. But when you say it, it doesn't reference. It references a time. If you are bored with something, you are actually bored from a moment in your life. You are you want a moment in your life, in your memories where you weren't bored, and you want this back. So you are actually looking for a way for this experience that you had to come back. Well, the only moment I'm not bored is when I play. Yes, precisely.
Voilà. C'est exactement ça.
That's it. And so?
Reprends conscience que tu es un enfant.
Well, just realize that you are a kid, you are a child.
Est-ce que, justement, quand je joue, donc la conscience par nature...
Consciousness, by nature, is always playing, is playful.
C'est le mental qui se prend... Enfin,
Only the mind, when we believe the mind and we believe this role of being an adult, that we start being serious. What's funny is that it has nothing to do with inside or outside, you know. When you were a kid, you were playing with the world, in the world, you were doing things. So, yeah, looks like it, yes, yeah. Do you remember the notion of time, those moments in your childhood? When did you have any notion of time back then? While playing, no, not so much, no. Yeah, that's synonymous. Timelessness and game. Consciousness is permanently playing the game of contemplating itself. May I? In this proposition to turn inward, there's nothing unique. There's nothing playful, fun about it. Yes, I do have something very fun for you to do. Try and tell me what's your inside. Do you want me to describe what's inside me? Yeah, tell me what's inside. What is it that you call inside? It's going to be quite naive, but rather this way. There's a density. Very few colors. There's an image. I feel like coming back home rather than going outside. I go underground. It's kind of grey. It's lacking some light, maybe. Yeah. To the mind, it has no interest, of course. You know, when you compare it to the outside, where people are fighting, and this inside is not really interesting. And yet, there's a conviction that there's a sense, there's a meaning, and there's something to do with going inside, coming back inward. Yet, every time I do, I can feel like there's no. It's pointless to do that. A Parisian man, when he meets someone else from another city, so he says, "I'm from Paris." When he goes in another country, he says, "I'm French." Doesn't say I'm Parisian, not necessarily. He would more easily say I'm French.
I am French. Un Martien arrive. A Martian
comes in. This man will say, "I'm Earthling."
Au Martien, il dit "Je suis terrien."
To this Martian, the man will say, "I'm an Earthling."
Et imaginons si l'humanité avait un petit peu évolué.
And let's imagine that humanity has evolved and you could reside on different planets or even galaxies. You would say, "I'm from this galaxy." Right? I'm telling you about that because it has to do with what you're saying. It has to do with this inner life. Interiority is not, absolutely not what we think about. We tend to think that we think about inside of me as me, the body, but interiority is whatever appears within consciousness. In other words, where do I appear to you right now? It is a bit hard to answer that. I feel that my gravity center, my presence is here. Get out. Without thinking. Don't think about it. Well, this is what comes to me. So you think that you're here.
Ton centre de gravité,
your gravity center is here. Okay.
Versus donc
versus
quelque chose
something
qui serait là-bas.
That would be over there, or in the feet, or.
D'accord.
Okay. I'm not in my feet. I'm here. Okay.
Et pourtant, j'ai été alerté par plein de traditions. Si c'était possible, il faudrait éviter d'être là.
Non, il n'y a pas de problème.
There's no.
On fait avec.
There's no problem. Let's work with whatever is appearing to you. Let's say that your center is right here.
L'image que tu vois.
The image that you see.
Elle apparaît dans ton centre alors.
It appears in your center.
Puisque le centre de la conscience pour toi, il est là.
The center of consciousness to you is here. My theater is here, and it's a panoramic screenplay, and I construct and I build images from there.
Là encore, on prend pour acquis.
Again, we take for absolutely real,
à l'étiquetage mental. C'est-à-dire
and it has to do with labeling.
Quand tu vois une forme ici, sous
when you see a form, because you can
faire quelque chose avec, la bouger,
do something, move it,
forme et tu dis c'est moi.
You identify with that, saying it's me, because you feel like you can move it yourself,
ici, tu vois.
rather than a form that is appearing
Pourtant,
over
si
there.
tu regardes bien,
But if you look closely,
là, il y a des formes, il y a tes formes, et
there are forms there and over there, so quote-unquote forms, but they are still just forms appearing within the same space. It's the same everywhere.
La main ici,
is the hand here,
ta main, et même si,
your
par exemple,
hand,
si j'ai la main à côté de Gérald,
if I have my hand close to Gerald,
on a l'impression
and
que
apparently
je mets ma
there's,
main plus loin, est-ce que
if
la
I,
main de Gérald, en fait, comment expliquer ça?
it's quite hard to explain.
C'est pas évident à expliquer. Les deux apparaissent
The two of
en même
them
temps au sein
appear
de ce qui est vu.
simultaneously
Je sais pas si tu vois ce que je veux
within
dire.
what is seen.
Ce que je veux dire, c'est que l'image,
The
elle
image
apparaît pas à l'extérieur de toi-même.
appears
L'image que tu
not
perçois, elle apparaît à
outside
l'intérieur
of
de toi.
yourself, but
Et la
within
preuve
yourself.
qu'on peut en faire, c'est que selon
And to prove it,
Tu parlais une fois de distance entre la vision et l'objet. Qu'il n'y avait pas de distance entre la vision.
there's no distance
Oui.
between vision and the object that is
Il n'y
seen.
a pas de distance. Toutes
Yes.
les perceptions
All the perceptions, there's no
apparaissent sans aucune
distances.
distance.
All the perceptions
Mais ce qui
appear
crée la
without
c'est surtout
distance.
l'étiquetage.
What creates a
C'est par
distance
exemple, c'est ça
is
que je voulais dire,
labeling.
si
This
la-
is what I
si
wanted
la
to
main
say.
de
This,
Gérald est plus proche de moi
if
que de la mienne, je vais
Ger-
avoir le
Gerald's
sentiment
hand
que
is
elle est quand même plus
closer
étrangère à moi
to me
que ma
than
main.
my
Alors
own.
que ma main est plus
I
loin,
still
mais
will
c'est
feel,
plus
because
près.
of labeling,
Mais ça,
I will
c'est
still
faux.
feel it's
C'est
not
complètement
mine,
faux.
because
Il y a pas tout
But that's-
apparaît en même temps.
that's
fait,
wrong,
j'apparais à
that's
l'intérieur de
false.
toi.
I do appear
Et quand
within
tu
you.
parles de l'intériorité,
And when you talk
à un
about
moment donné, ce
interiority,
qui, dans la réalisation du soi, ce qui se produit et qui est vraiment
When
flagrant et qu'on en fait, les
self-realization
choses sont comme ça vraiment,
appears,
c'est que
when you realize that
tu te rends
things
compte en méditation
are
par exemple,
how
tu
they
vas te
are,
rendre
you
compte que
you
ce que
realize
tu
that
es avant
in
tout
meditation,
est
what
un
you are
espace,
prior to
et
everything
toutes
is a
les perceptions
space,
apparaissent au sein
and
de cet
all the
espace,
perceptions
y compris les
appear
perceptions
within that
subtiles
space,
comme l'ennui,
including
comme,
subtle perceptions
toute
like boredom
fluctuation,
or
quelle
any
qu'elle soit,
fluctuation.
apparaissent au sein de cet espace.
They appear within that space.
Et là où c'est intéressant, c'est quand tu
And
vas explorer
where
cet
it
espace.
gets interesting is when you start and explore
Tu vois,
that space.
Ah, ok, il y a eu un son là. tu
There
vois,
was
il y a
a
des
sound
choses,
right
il y a
now,
des mouvements, il y a des
and
trucs
there's
qui
movement.
semblent,
So things
bouger.
appear to be moving,
mais ça ne fait qu'apparaître en
but
surface
it is just
d'un espace qui
appeering
ne
on the
bouge pas du tout, ne
surface
fluctue pas
of
du
a
tout.
space that is
C'est
not
comme la métaphore
moving
de ce
at all,
matin
not
avec l'eau et les
fluctuating.
vagues.
Same with,
À un moment donné,
this
tu te rends compte que
image
tu es
of the
conscience
water
un peu comme un espace
and
infini, c'est pas un
and the
espace
wave.
avec
You
un
realize
contour,
that
une
you
forme.
are consciousness, a
Et là,
little
tu
bit
touches
like an
l'océan.
endless,
La métaphore,
infinite
c'est que
space.
tu te
And this is where
réalises que tu es l'océan.
you realize that you are the ocean.
Et tu réalises qu'en fait,
and you realize that all the
toutes
waves,
les vagues, c'est-à-dire toutes les perceptions,
all the perceptions,
là, il y a
that
une
means
voix qui
waves are the
s'entend,
perceptions. So there's a voice that you hear
qui
right now
s'entend.
that is heard,
C'est pas toi
that
qui entends la
is
voix.
heard. You're not the one hearing it, it is heard.
C'est ce que je veux dire?
Do you
Tu
see
vois la
what I mean?
différence?
Do you see the
C'est pas
difference?
toi la personne
You're not,
qui fait
it's not
quelque
you, the
chose pour
person, that
entendre
is
la voix.
doing
Ça
something
s'entend
to hear
de soi-même.
this voice. It is heard on
Ça
its own.
apparaît au sein de
It
l'espace.
appears within the space.
C'est explorer que je comprends
It,
pas. Explorer.
I don't understand this idea of
Bah,
exploring.
regarder sa nature.
To look at
Et c'est
your
là
nature,
justement où c'est important de regarder la nature de cet espace parce que
this is where it gets
tu vas te
important
rendre
to look
compte
at
que
the
peu
nature of your
importe ce qui peut
this
se
space,
dérouler,
whatever can,
cet
because
espace-là n'est jamais
whatever
touché.
happens, this
c'est
space
ça
is
qui
never
libère.
touched. And that's what's liberating.
Quelle que soit l'intensité de
Whatever
l'émotion
the
que tu puisses
intensity of the
vivre,
emotion that you can go through and can feel,
lorsque tu te rends compte que
when
cette
you
émotion, c'est
realize
juste une perception
this
qui apparaît au
emotion
sein
is
de l'espace
just
et que
a
toi, tu es
perception
l'espace,
appearing within a space and that what
eh
you
ben, à
are
ce
is
moment-là,
that
ça
space,
ne,
then
ça ne peut pas t'impacter.
you can't be
Quel que soit,
impacted. Whatever
regarde dans cette pièce, quel que soit
in
ton
this
face
space, look
avec
at
le
that,
corps
this
dans cette
space.
pièce,
Whatever the
est-ce que tu peux
bodies are
impacter
doing,
l'espace?
can you
C'est
impact the
écrit
space,
même,
really? It is
Krishna
even
le dit
written,
vraiment comme ça.
Krishna says it
La
this way,
conscience est
consciousness
immortelle. Nul ne
is
peut,
immortal.
je sais plus comment il dit, mais
No
genre la
one can
transpercer, la brûler, la
pierce it,
noyer.
burn it, or drown
Il
it,
énumère plusieurs trucs comme ça, l'asphyxier. Non, c'est impossible.
asphyxiate it.
L'espace n'est pas touché.
Space is not touched.
Pour être touché,
To be
il faut
touched,
se croire être quelqu'un.
you have to believe that you are someone.
Donc tant que tu crois qu'il y a quelqu'un assis sur
As
une
long
chaise
as you
en train
believe that there's someone
d'écouter
sitting
un
in a chair
satsang,
listening to a satsang,
Il y a identification.
there is
identification et
identification
et du coup,
there,
tu te sens,
and you
tu te
feel
sens touché.
touched, impacted.
Alors attention parce qu'il y a touché et touché.
Careful, there's touched and
Il y a le
touched.
touché en termes de
There's touch
petit moi
as in
égo. Ce qui est bien,
little
c'est que le petit moi égo, on
little
peut
me,
tout de suite repérer quand il est touché. Ça,
and we
ça
can see
ça
when it's
contracte, ça
actually being touched, the
Donc,
ego,
c'est un
because
bon moyen de
it's
voir
there's a
si
contraction,
c'est le petit moi
tension.
qui est touché. Et là, en général, ça entre en réaction.
So there's usually a reaction in the
Et
body,
le,
and
il y a
then
aussi
there's
être touché
to be
à un autre niveau. C'est au niveau,
touched but moved
à un niveau plus profond.
on a deeper
Dans
level.
ces cas-là, ce qui se manifeste, c'est l'inverse.
And usually what
Et
happens
dans
is
le
the
corps, c'est
contrary.
vécu comme un état d'expansion.
In the body, it
Dans le
is
corps.
lived
Le
as
ressenti.
some sort of expansion.
Mais c'est une image quand je dis être touché.
It is
La
just
conscience,
an image,
réellement,
because
n'est pas
consciousness
touchée.
really is not moved, touched.
Quand on est touché au niveau de la conscience,
When we are
en
moved
fait, on
on
n'est pas
the
vraiment
consciousness
touché,
level,
on
we are
est,
not really moved. We are one.
On se sent encore un dans l'expérience.
We feel
Ouais,
one
on
in
se
the
sent un dans
experience. We feel as one.
Par exemple, des fois, quand on dit je suis touché de compassion ou de componction, quand on prend les textes,
When we hear people say I'm moved with compassion
c'est
towards,
qu'en fait, à un moment donné, on se sent un dans l'expérience.
that's because we
Avec
feel as
l'autre,
one in the experience with the
justement, on
other.
reconnaît qu'il n'y a pas d'autre. Et
We
donc,
realize and we
automatiquement,
recognize
il y a un
and
élan
acknowledge that there's
qui agit
not two,
pour l'autre.
there's not another, and we just and there's automatically an impulse to take care.
Je suis passionné par ce que tu transmets.
I'm quite passionate about what
C'est pour ça qu'on emploie le
you're
mot
sharing. Reason why we
passion.
use
Texte aussi.
the word passion in the texts and scriptures.
Pour t'embêter, enfin, c'est-
It is not to bother you, but what about this boredom?
Est-ce qu'on s'en est non, on s'en est pas éloigné.
We haven't really gotten away from it,
J'ai
really.
l'impression que
I feel like
je me dis à moi-même, je me raconte à moi-même que je dois
I'm
résoudre.
telling myself that I need to resolve
Et le message que
this-
tu me fais passer, c'est il y a
this
pas à résoudre.
boredom problematic.
Il faut le regarder pour voir qu'il
But what you're
n'existe pas.
saying is that I don't have to
irréel.
resolve everything. What we're saying actually is that see
Ça
that
a
it's
l'air vrai
unreal.
pour l'instant.
It appears to
Ouais.
be real, but
Ouais.
it's not entirely true. It's not absolutely true. I can see that this boredom really never misses the mark.
Ok.
It's always there.
Et si tu allais voir directement cet ennui, l'ennui aussi, ça
What
vient
if
du
you-
sentiment de
What if you
manque,
were
tout
to
simplement.
go and see this
C'est tu as le
boredom?
sentiment qu'il te manque quelque
Do you
chose.
have the feeling that there's
Et
something
si,
missing?
là,
Usually
maintenant,
comes
là,
from that.
si
Can
tu
be one of the
te-
reasons. So right now,
tu
if
me
you
demandais,
asked
tout se
yourself,
passerait bien,
everything would
tout
be
irait
perfect
parfaitement, si
if
seulement j'avais
only I had
quoi?
what?
Qu'est-ce qui te manque?
What's missing?
Je peux que dire ce que je porte en moi.
Bah oui, bien sûr.
The only thing I can talk about is what's
Non,
within me right now.
ça m'embête parce que je sens que c'est pas très sérieux.
I'm
Il y a une race de gens
bothered because it's not really
des
serious.
gens qui sont éveillés. Vous n'êtes pas les premiers à qui je dis ça.
There's
En fait, je suis un
some people that really don't like is people who are awakened, because I'm quite jealous. I'm not saying that if you didn't exist, I would be very happy,
En fait,
but
on n'existe pas.
well, actually, we do not exist, so it's good.
Vous produisez de Satsang. Je connais même des gens qui font la promo de ce
Excellent, excellent.
Ouais. Ouais. Ça peut créer un gros sentiment de manque, ouais.
It can
Le
create
désir
quite
de-
a sense of lack, a deep sense of lack,
de
this
réalisation, ouais.
this
Ouais,
desire to awaken.
Ouais. Ok. Parce qu'en fait, on s'imagine beaucoup de choses
Because
sur l'éveil.
we imagine a lot about awakening and enlightenment.
La bonne nouvelle, c'est que t'as pas trop à
The good news
t'occuper
is
tant que ça, parce que tout
you
ce
don't
que
have
tu vas
to
imaginer,
tire
c'est pas
yourself too much, because whatever you can imagine, that's
cherches
not
tant
going to
que
be
tu
it.
veux.
You can
Ce
look
sera-
for
ce
and seek
sera
as much as you
jamais
want.
ça.
It's never going to be it.
J'ai pas l'impression de perdre du temps à
I don't feel like I'm losing,
Voilà.
my
Voilà,
time
exactement. Bah, on est au
seeking.
lieu du problème. C'est ça.
Precisely,
C'est
that
parce
is
que,
your problem right there,
comme
imagination,
tu
because
entretiens
you entertain
une
yourself
imagination, en plus, quand
with
tu le dis,
imagination,
ça a l'air de
and
bien t'inspirer,
when you
parce que
talk
tu
about
regardes
it,
le ciel
you
comme
look
si
you look up
ça
skyward,
allait te tomber dessus comme
and
ça.
as if it was gonna,
Donc là, il y a-
fall
donc
on
là, il y a
you
un gros
at some point.
positif
So
qui
there's
arrive.
a
Et
huge
comme on vit
positive
dans
that
le
is
monde
gonna
de
happen,
la dualité,
and
le
as
monde
we say
relatif,
in
tout
on a
positif
duality
arrive avec son
level,
contraire, donc
every
forcément,
positive comes
le
with the
contraire,
negative,
c'est l'ennui.
and then the
Donc c'est ça.
contrary to this is boredom.
Laisse tomber cette idée
So let go of this
de quelque chose qui va arriver
something big that is,
d'extraordinaire, parce que c'est pas
extraordinary that is going to happen to you, because it is not extraordinary.
Arrivé à ce stade, je prends le risque de bizarrer encore, ça ressemble. Il y a la tentation du suicide.
I can feel up to this point that there's this temptation for suicide. Do you see what I mean? Yes, yeah, absolutely we see.
Et j'arrive pas à honorer ça.
I can't even honor that, Might as well, whatever, if it's this grey underground for the next 20 years, that's never going to be the underground with nothing or grey. I can't really honor this proposition. Sometimes I'm, standing on the doorstep, and 1 minute after I feel bored, and I just can't go through the door.
C'est plus simple que l'ennui.
It's simpler than boredom.
C'est trop l'ennui en fait.
Boredom is too much. It's something that is added on.
C'est trop compliqué.
It's too complicated. I might, I really feel like it's not my fault. It's not about someone's fault. It's funny that I keep saying that. The creation consciousness that has created that, I could have gone without, really.
Tu crois qu'il y a...
You believe
Il y a un Dieu comme ça qui
there's a God that makes you feel bored and stuck in a loop. To be honest, yes. Yes.
Ça arrive très souvent.
It's quite, it happens often.
Des grands saints. Et je connais même un grand
even
saint
in
en Inde qui a dit
with
de lui-même
great
que
saints.
ce qui lui avait,
And one of them in India
entre
said,
guillemets, le plus
what has
allongé son temps de quête,
what
le
has
plus retardé sa réalisation,
delayed
c'était
realization
le fait qu'il
was
était en glorification devant
was that he was glorifying a God, an almighty God on top of him. And he wouldn't allow himself for himself to be absolute consciousness. He'd rather stay in this position of adoring, in this position of someone spiritual. Every time in his daily life would say, "Thank you, dear God," and would say when something bad was happening, would ask, "It's not my fault. What did I do?" That's an idea that a lot of people have that is false. There's nothing like that, not a God like that. There's no God outside of yourself. Nope. But even me, in the book that we've written together, we've talked about that. It's probably what has delayed the process for me too, because I had a romantic vision of enlightenment. And you look a little bit romantic yourself. It's true. When I see yourself talk about it, I can see that there's something, and there's God that is coming up and showing up and say, "This is me," and I thought so myself. Those satsangs are quite, romantic, really. You, but also others, you distillate ideas that are makes me speechless. It is a change that is so different from what we can see and hear. Usually. Those that we are sharing are not ideas, and the change that you're talking about is not a change. It's not a change in the movie. What's your name? The story of Laurent will keep on going after enlightenment, and in the very same way. And even if the story of Laurent in the movie might be really meaningless without any sort of interest, you wouldn't write books about your life, and yet. What changes is not within the movie. It has nothing to do with the movie, but you realize that Laurent's life, the entirety of it, is contained within something else. All of that appears within something else, and this something else is what you are really. And that's what's romantic. Do you see what I mean? Yes. It's something else than the underground,
Tu peux changer la déco comme tu veux.
You can actually redecorate if you feel like it.
C'est comme tu veux.
It is as you wish. What you're describing right there is very classic. It's pretty much all the time like that. Yeah. So you can heal that. You can heal that. No, you'll get bored of that at some point. What happened to me is I actually got fed up to be tensed towards any kind of movement towards a seeking actually dropped. And yet you talk about this impulse from the heart, but the impulse says, "Stop looking." Truly, I'm serious. It actually puts a stop to the quest. Even if this stopping, does it comes up to the point where even going inward stops? Yes. Maybe comprehensions might come from inside, quote unquote, or outside, but those are just words. So there are comprehensions happening but those are just words. Because to consciousness, there's no outside, no inside.
Et aussi,
And also,
peut-être aussi que tu suis plein de
you follow a lot
conseils de sages
lot
qui
of
disent qu'il
advice,
faut méditer, etc.
advices that
Mais
sages say
méditer n'est
you
pas
should
forcément
meditate, for
nécessaire
instance,
pour réaliser le soi.
but you don't have to meditate to
Si tu as
realize the
envie de
self.
méditer, je
If
sais
you
pas,
don't like it,
va voir les fleurs dans un parc.
go see the flowers in a park or do
Ou autre
something
chose,
else,
je sais
whatever.
pas, il y a plein d'autres
There's so many ways
où justement
where
ce qui serait peut-être plus constructif,
it
c'est
actually
tu
could
m'as
be
dit,
more constructive, more interesting for
tu
you.
parlais du jeu,
You were talking about
du fait
games
de jouer,
and being
de
playful.
contacter intérieurement ce que
Well, try and contact that to reach
qui est
that.
vraiment, quel est l'élan,
What is
comment
the
ça a envie de jouer
impulse?
vraiment.
How do you want to
Comment ça a envie
play
de jouer.
really? How do you want to play?
Peut-être que si tu t'ennuies, peut-être
Maybe if you're
qu'intérieurement,
bored,
justement,
maybe
l'élan du cœur te dit
the impulse
arrête de méditer, quoi.
from your heart will tell you stop,
Fais
meditate,
autre chose.
do something else.
De toute façon, tu peux pas quitter la conscience.
You
Je connais
can't
des gens en épluchant une
quit
pomme de terre,
consciousness.
ils
I know
ont eu
people who've been, peeling a potato and they've
pas
had
l'éveil définitif, mais en
maybe
tout
not
cas, une
definitive
certaine compréhension. Ça peut
realization,
se faire,
but some
mais ça aurait pu
big
être l'éveil définitif. Mais
understanding. It could
ce
have
que je veux dire, c'est
been
que ça peut se faire n'importe quand, n'importe où.
realizing the
N'importe
self.
quel,
It can happen anytime, anywhere.
tu peux très bien, par exemple,
You can really
méditer en
you
marchant dans la
can
rue.
meditate while walking in the street.
Et quand je dis méditer, c'est
And
juste
when I
être
say
conscient. On me demandait une
meditating,
définition
I'm
de
just
méditation hier soir,
being
c'est
conscious. I'm just
génial.
saying, someone
C'était,
asked me a definition.
c'est juste
To meditate is
être
only
vraiment,
to be
être conscient, quoi.
conscious,
Être conscient de tout.
to be conscious of everything,
Et être conscient d'être conscient.
to be conscious of being
Ouais,
conscious.
ça c'est, si on peut,
If
ça,
we
c'est
can,
vraiment,
if you can,
ouais.
yeah, that's quite good.
Être conscient d'être conscient, ouais.
To be conscious of being conscious.
Consciente d'elle-même.
Voilà, c'est ça.
Famous consciousness being conscious of itself.
Oui. C'est l'invitation qui est,
It is the invite
qui est vraiment portée depuis les sages hébreux, quoi, depuis l'Ancien
that
Testament. Je
is
suis ce que
carried
je
on
suis,
by
c'est
all
ce
the
que ça veut
sages,
dire.
even back from
C'est là où
Hebrew
ça pointe,
sages.
quoi.
I am that I am. This is
Et
what
ça
it's
va dire,
pointing
je
to.
suis ce je suis plus un truc.
And it didn't say I
Je
am
suis
this
ce je
I
suis
am
tout court.
plus something else. It was just I am that I am.
Ce qui suit.
Truth
En fait,
is I am
il y a
this.
plusieurs
Yep.
traductions, mais
There's
après,
different
pour être plus
translations.
précis, justement,
To be more precise,
Moïse demande,
Moïse asks,
et là, pour le coup, la voix vraiment dit,
asks,
mon nom c'est je suis.
my
Tu
name
peux vraiment pas te
is
planter.
I am. So you can't get it
Au
wrong,
cas où t'aurais
really,
pas compris, tu vois. C'est vraiment je suis.
in case you didn't get it, but it's really I am.
Oui. Enfin non, c'est pas la conscience de Moïse, c'est la conscience.
C'est la conscience.
Consciousness
oui.
La conscience.
says it's not Moise's consciousness, it's consciousness that says I am.
Mais c'est la conscience qui est
Consciousness
sous forme de Moïse, qui
and
dit à
under
Moïse,
the form that is taking the form of Moise saying I am.
c'est aussi simple que ça.
It is really as simple as that.
Il y a
But there's a lot.
les déprogrammations, elles sont beaucoup de l'ordre du
Deprogramming
faire,
has a lot to do
mais on
with
est aussi beaucoup dans une culture du faire.
doing, but we are also
Depuis tout
caught into a culture of doing since
Très
we were
souvent,
children.
quand je suis allé
And
en
quite
Inde,
often, when
quand
I went to India, when
j'ai vu des Occidentaux
I saw
en Inde qui arrivaient, puis qui avaient
Westerners
cette culture
coming
du
to
faire,
India
puis là, ils
with this
arrivent
culture of doing,
à
and
Rishikesh, puis
and
ils
they
voient
come to
un
Rishikesh
yogi qui est
and
sous son arbre,
they
puis
see
il
a
pose une
yogi
question,
under a tree,
depuis combien de temps vous êtes là? 25
asking
ans,
like,
ok, sans
how long have you
bouger,
been
ok.
here? 25 years
Et
without
là, du
moving.
coup, ça fait un choc.
It is
Tu te
a bit of
remets
a
en
shock
question,
for
tu
a
dis,
Westerners.
ok,
Like
j'ai fait
you
plein
ask
de
yourself,
trucs dans la vie,
I've
mais
been
au
doing a
final,
lot of things in my life, but in
c'était
the
pas
end,
obligé, peut-être.
maybe I didn't have to.
En fait, on se rend compte qu'on n'est pas obligé de faire pour être.
We realize that we don't have to do to be.
Mais le piège, parfois, c'est de s'arrêter de faire.
Well, the
Bah, ça dépend,
trick
ça dépend.
might be to
Si
be
l'élan
to
du cœur te dit arrête de faire,
Si l'élan du cœur vous dit, mais si c'est le mental qui dit, ok, bah alors j'arrête puisqu'il n'y a rien à faire, on risque de se figer complètement. Et
Ouais.
là, t'as
maybe the
retrouvé,
trick is that the mind will tell you, well, if there's nothing to do, then I don't do anything.
vouloir non faire,
Well, this is where
c'est
discernment comes in. But to want to do something comes
C'est
from
pour
the
ça
ego.
que
Or
la boussole intérieure, elle est là. Et quand, par exemple,
this
très
is why
typiquement,
this compass
vous êtes un bon
is-
chercheur
is-
spirituel, vous voulez
around the heart. And so for instance, you're doing something and suddenly you want to go to Nepal. And so if it's authentic, you will feel an opening, or you will try and do it with some sort of determination coming from the ego, and it's gonna close around the heart. And if you don't listen to that, you can get caught up quite deep into the illusion. And imagine you go into a cave and you have a few samadhis experiences, and you come back and you've got your little diploma, and then you can be tricked, you can still be caught up in a role. I had a period like that. Hearing people like you, I realized, okay, I'm just going to stop. But I realized that I actually stopped in the dream. I stopped myself within the dream. Someone in a satsang said, if you're dreaming that you have a flat tire, and you know that you are in a dream, and you stay sitting, near your car waiting for something, or imagine that there's I'm not there, there's no tire, there's nothing to do, then you're going to be stuck for quite a while near that car. There's no need to act as if I'm not here, or there's to deny And I realized I was persuading myself because I couldn't be aching or hurting because I wasn't there, but I was actually still hurting. And someone said, if you are hurting, stop pretending that you're not here and just acknowledge that you are. You are suffering. But if you try and try and be some sort of character that is not feeling and not sensing anything, then it's going to make you suffer. Yeah, to pretend that you're not here is not good. But the fact that we say that you're not the character doesn't mean that the character disappears. It's important to understand that. Well, it's not easy. It actually doesn't disappear, but it is included within this whole. And it's absolutely part of the one, and it's absolutely okay. This sentence that you say, there's no one, is quite hard to understand. To really perceive the truth behind that, it's quite hard. But this sentence, it feels like no one is sitting there. There's a difference for me between there's no one sitting right here and right now, and the one that is talking and sitting is no one. It's if there's a tiger in your dream, yes, it is a dream, so there's no tiger, but in your dream, it is a tiger in front of you. So we have to be quite discerning. So it is this discernment is very important. A true discernment is very. We could actually come to a conclusion, a mental conclusion. And you could. Well, actually, it could be used as an experience also, as well. The mind, it's quite crazy how the mind can actually make a concept out of things, because what you're talking about, it actually manages to create a me that is not personal. It is, again, simpler than that. When it is said, there is no one, just see that what we call me doesn't exist as a person. That is what we're talking about. Objectively, what you're seeing right now, it's not a little a man called Pierre. It's an aggregate of different things, energies, vibrations, thoughts. There's a voice. You hear it. You hear that it's a little different from the others, but it's only vibrations and energies, and this is only just manifested level, relative level. The real me is consciousness that plays the game of doing that, put together, crystallize energy here and there, and manages to make itself believe for a while that there are two entities very distinct and separated, but that's not really the truth. Even scientifically, it's been proven. It's a very good meditation, and you won't be bored with that one. Try and find during your meditation is, where is me? Where is this me? Where is the ego? Where? This big fat me, where is it? Try and find it. You won't find it. Nowhere. You talked about this grabbing from the mind. Often I've done actually this meditation. I was looking for Philip. I was looking for this me. I couldn't find, and I ended up crying, and I was crying because I don't exist. It is the truth. We said earlier that we didn't exist. There's a difference between exist and to be. Beingness is prior to exist. The character doesn't exist. So the one who was crying, seeing that I wasn't existing, was the character, yes? Would have been interesting to explore this sensation of non-existence. Is this sensation of non-existence, how is it? How is it? How does it feel? It's really interesting to look at it. It's neither agreeable or not, nice or not. You can't qualify it. But doesn't feel like it needs or wants anything more. Can we stay still there? When we can't perceive the impulse of the heart, it feels like we're going through some sort of huge emptiness. Only once I met someone who really wasn't feeling anything on the physical level. She blocked everything. She couldn't cry anymore. She couldn't talk anymore for 4 or 5 years.
On a la grande grâce, vraiment plus grande grâce finalement,
the
c'est d'avoir
biggest
ce corps.
grace
Sur le plan
that we
relatif,
have
c'est
is to
d'avoir
have
ce
this
corps,
body, is to be here.
C'est un outil
It is a tool
extrêmement précieux.
that is extremely
Et moi, je
precious.
reviendrai dans le corps. Parce
And I
que,
would come back to the body if I
je veux
were you.
dire, bien au contact de ce que
To
ça
be
dit.
in
Parce que le
contact
corps,
with
les 100 000
what the
milliards de
body
cellules, c'est
is
surtout pas le
saying.
mental qui vont
Because
pouvoir,
all the millions of
pouvoir gérer
cells,
ça, c'est ce
it's
qui va au
not
niveau
the
du
mind
mental.
that is actually
Les 100 000
handling
milliards de
that.
cellules qui
All
fonctionnent
those
en
cells
harmonie,
that are
c'est la vie
working
même
together harmoniously
qui fait que ça fonctionne
is
comme ça.
actually it's life that makes
Donc
it
le corps, il a
work
les
perfectly.
réponses.
So the body has all the answers.
Et tu as un exemple précis? C'est par rapport à...
Do you have an example?
Oui.
Des fois, dans mon vécu actuel, j'ai des motivations, et puis après, je me dis, mais à quoi ça sert?
I do have in daily life, I have impulses, but then it drops.
Ras-le-bol de toutes ces voies, quelque part, ras-le-bol de la recherche.
I'm kind of
Mais
fed
ça,
up
c'est les
with the
dents du cœur qui
quest.
disent ça.
Yeah, but that's the impulse from the heart that says that. That is the heart that is talking there.
Ouais. Pose-toi, t'as dit?
Ah, ouais,
Ouais.
c'est ça.
Yeah, just stay still. Yes.
D'accord. Et alors?
Okay, sure, but what do I do with that?
Et après? Ouais.
So what?
Ben, la question fondamentale qui est
Fundamental
à la fois,
question
dont la réponse est quasiment la même pour tout le monde, mais avec des variantes, c'est qu'est-ce que tu veux vraiment? Et ça, c'est très
is
important.
the fundamental question is
de
what
se
is
poser
it
cette
that
question.
you want? It's very important to
Qu'est-ce
ask
que tu veux
yourself
vraiment?
this question. What do you
Regarde
really
ce que
want?
tu veux vraiment.
Have a
Ah,
look.
vas-y.
Have a look.
Va voir.
Ouais, le bonheur, mais bon,
Happiness.
tellement vaste.
But it's so,
D'accord. Qu'est-ce qui te fait
Vast.
croire que c'est pas là?
and what makes you believe that it's not there already?
Loin.
You told me.
Ouais, mais ça, c'est une réponse toute faite.
Yeah, but that's-
Regarde exactement
That's answer from the mind. But
l'idée qui te fait croire que
what is really the
le
idea?
bonheur
What
n'est
is the
pas là.
belief that makes you believe that happiness is not there already?
Ça revient un petit peu à ce qu'on disait tout à l'heure. Qu'est-ce qui manque? Si tu veux.
In other words, what's missing?
Ce qui vient comme ça, c'est l'amour.
What comes up is love.
Ouais,
Okay,
mais c'est un peu la même chose.
it's a bit.
Qu'est-ce qui
It's
te fait
pretty
croire
much
que
the
l'amour
same.
n'est pas là? C'est
What
la même
makes you
chose,
believe
puisque
that love is not
la
there?
joie, l'amour, la
Because
paix, c'est
joy, love,
tout ça,
peace,
ça,
all of that
fait
is
partie,
is
enfin, c'est
part of is
les reflets de être.
those are the reflection of being and beingness.
Donc, qu'est-ce qui te fait croire que l'amour n'est pas là?
What makes you believe that love is not there?
Une somme de croyances.
Yeah, some beliefs.
Des voiles.
Ouais. Tu sais, des fois, c'est vraiment subtil, hein.
Sometimes
Des
it's
fois, il y a des-
very subtle.
Ce dont je me rends compte, c'est que
What I notice,
j'entends assez régulièrement
I
des
hear
choses
quite
du genre,
often-
j'y ai pas le droit. Tu vois, par exemple.
I hear what quite often, I'm not worth it.
Hein?
This is not for me,
Quelque part, c'est possible.
right?
Il y a aussi un truc qui est vraiment récurrent, c'est
There's also
je suis
something
pas
that
une
is
assez bonne personne, des choses
coming
comme ça. Mon comportement ne calque
coming
pas
up a lot.
avec
I'm not a good
le
enough person.
comportement
How I
spirituel, le
behave is
comportement
not
du sage, etc.
mirroring
J'ai pas encore assez de méditation. J'ai
the
pas-
way
je suis pas encore
sages are
assez
acting.
vegan, crudivore.
I'm not vegan enough.
j'ai pas
I'm
assez
not
Purger les vies
I'm not
antérieures.
haven't cleaned my past lives enough.
Juste une seconde. Tu vois, il y a,
Do you
il y a-
do you see?
il y a des fois
Sometimes
la croyance qu'il
The
faudrait que la
belief-
personne soit différente pour que ça arrive.
there's the
Il
belief
faudrait,
that the person should be different
Des
for
conditions différentes
enlightenment
pour que ça
to
arrive.
happen, some sort of different conditions.
Ça résonne.
Ouais.
It resonates.
Mais paradoxalement, ça peut être vrai par rapport à ce que
Paradoxically, it can be true what you're
justement, qu'il
saying.
y a des nœuds qui
You know, what you were saying about the knot this morning, that prevent. We can believe that it prevents us from being enlightened. Because the not is actually the duality that we are creating, but the duality sometimes, those ones, this morning, the one I was talking about, the ones I was talking about, like family or lineage or to reject experiences, those kind of knots are quite obvious. But there are knots and beliefs that are more subtle. I'm not good enough to welcome you. To have, subconsciously, you can actually believe in that sort of belief coming from a culture. Or maybe to love sages and saints, creating subtly a separation and putting them on a more elevated plan, like on pedestal. It creates a duality, and whatever creates a duality will prevent you to realize what's already here. It's going to create a limitation. The ego of the worshipper is a limitation. I've met lots of nuns and monks. I've actually been through lots of. I've met a lot of people in India and France, and I've met a lot and I've seen a lot of nuns and monks having very deep understanding. But yet, the very last knot that was subsiding was this: like, no, Jesus is Jesus. I'm not Jesus. Consciousness that was making Jesus talk is the same consciousness that is making you talk or think. It is the same. There's no difference. Yet, Jesus said, give me all your burdens. Yeah, but when Jesus says that, he talks from presence. It is presence talking. It's consciousness talking. Even when he says, I'm the life, way, and the truth, and no one will come to the kingdom without coming through me. It's not Jesus that was talking. It was, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This consciousness, it means that this consciousness is the way. You have to be as conscious or conscious to be conscious as much as you can. The truth is that what is true, what never changes, what is eternal is this consciousness. Whatever the state of the body or even the state of the world, the world says white, then red, then black. It changes all the time. But inner life, interiority, just, for a lack of a better word, consciousness is always the same, identical. Life, what about life? Life is the same. Little me will say my life, and then your life, but there's not two lives, there's just one life, including Jesus' life. If I ask you, do you feel life right now? Do you taste life? Doesn't have to be a physical sensation. Are you asking me? Yeah, just who is this me? There was a TV show called Live My Life. I'm telling you, live life. When you live life, the life that you live is it's not a feeling, it's not a perception. You know that you are life. Well, it's the same life in Jesus, in every sages, every saint, in an animal, in a plant, in a raindrop, in the table. Krishna said that too. inevitably, whatever the way, you will come through me and by me. So what is Eucharisty then?
Moi, je suis pas très fort. J'écoutais pas trop ce qu'il disait. Moi, j'étais dans la chambre en train de méditer.
I wasn't listening much, so I don't know much. What is a Eucharisty? Well, it is at the center of monastic life, in a way. And worshipping Eucharisty has a meaning too.
Ceci est mon corps.
This is my body.
C'est quand il dit ça, il parle de la matière.
When he says that, he's talking about matter.
Toute matière
all matter
est mon corps.
Is my body.
La conscience, en fait,
consciousness,
elle pourrait vous dire aussi, déjà, tu es moi, mais aussi
could say,
ce corps,
you are me,
corps, en fait,
but it could also say that this body and this matter that you think you are is also my body.
Christ, en fait.
You are the body of the Christ. This body is the body of the Christ.
Et toute matière, en fait.
All matter, not only the physical envelope. All matter.
Le truc, c'est qu'on a tendance à séparer.
The thing is, we tend to separate.
C'est quand même très drôle que.
It's quite funny.
Que la plupart des mystiques chrétiens.
Most of mystic Christians have been repeating and have taken this Eucharisty and this is my body to make them understand that matter is spiritual, is spirit. And after that, we hear some sort of opposition. In most of mystics, there's an opposition between the spiritual, the spirit, and the body, and the matter. And this is an illusion, a big one. And it can create confusions. It is part of our culture, this. Sexuality is less saint, spiritual, than a statue of Buddha, or any kind of action that you could judge as more spiritual. This is false. This is an illusion. That has been a very big shock to me. For 17 years I've been tempted by monastic life because I thought you had to have, a spiritual life to be able to realize the self. And then I have a partner. There's sexuality happening, and right in the middle of the act, I actually had realized right before, and I realized I was always the same. I'm still the same. I'm always the same. Whatever happens, there's no actions that you have done could stain you. It really, this Eucharisty thing questions me a lot. It can actually bring realization. Only the heart can bring, yes, there. If it's done through the heart. We start with worshipping, so it's a motion that is limiting. At first we don't see it, but it is apparently limiting. Depends. It's limiting if you indulge yourself in this role of the worshipper. What happens often is we keep the duality to be able to be able to be in this role of worshipping, this role of worshipping this entity that we call God or whatever the name. The mind makes, this idea which is only a mind, it's just a concept of something infinite. But it can actually bring realization. To be worshipping, and I've done that in India, to actually chant the names of God. So this worshipping way, path, it has only a meaning if you go up to the point of dissolution, There's lots of stories in India where this path of adoration, a very famous one is a doll made of salt that wants to find its true nature and acknowledge its true nature. So it knows that the ocean has salt. So I'm going to go and actually swim in salt, and it dissolves into itself. What happens is there's a dissolution of this idea of a me with adoration. What happens in the end is that with adoration it dissolves. But most of the time we want to stay quite comfortable. We want things to be safe. So usually the mind doesn't want to jump the gun. It is quite a lure from Christianity then, to...
Ouais, mais il n'y a pas que cette voie-là, parce que en fait non, c'est pas que la religion chrétienne, mais en fait, soit tu restes au point
either you stay on this existential level with a nice God that answers your prayers,
ou soit tu vas au-delà, quoi.
You go beyond that. You realize that it is quite a logical deduction, really. It can be. I was talking to a friend. She's actually a nun now, but she couldn't accept that she was God, which is illogical. From, okay, let's see. God has created everything, right? So it's created you, right? So, and what it is made of? Well, himself. So then what are you? You're God. No. There was a bug in the system. In its image, yes. But I'm guessing that there were Christians that went through realization, right? Yeah, sure, of course.
Ouais, mais enfin, des fois, ils sont passés aussi pour des têtes de Turcs, hein, au sein même de la...
Sometimes, actually, some of them actually were scapegoats. Some of them, when they tried to explain their understandings, some of them were put into quarantine or... I had a friend who was a Benedictine monk, and I don't know where, can't remember where, but...
Bref, il y avait une sainte, en fait, qui était tout le temps en lévitation.
And there was a saint that was levitating all the time, and she was, pointed out by all the nuns around her. So she wasn't affected, but it's not necessarily recognized by everyone, mystic Christians.
Pas du tout, mais elle y pouvait rien.
She couldn't help herself. It was happening. My guess is it's more than cultural. It's also not to get attached to the manifestation and the cities. Yeah, maybe, why not? But that means that there's a fear behind it. It means that there's a fear. But anyway, all the paths, every way, every path, even the racist or violent people, all of them, it will bring everyone and everything to realization, because you can't be outside of realization. You can't not be. You can make you believe that you're not what you are. But well, Christianity is my culture. So when you said you had this mantra about Jesus, so I thought that it was something that was catching up with you. So I feel like we have to be careful not to reject what would be useful, and at the same time some things might be useless. There is, to me, something quite interesting and useful in the Eucharistic. Realization can be had through anything, really. There was someone meditating in India when he was coming out of his hut, and there was one
chaque fois, il le regardait, il trouvait ça fort comme un brin d'herbe.
blade of grass outside in the outside, and he was actually watching it every day a little more. He was kind of amazed at how does one blade of grass comes up right here, and he actually realized the self through that. I also remember one man who was a gangster and went through drug trafficking, and killed actually policemen. And he felt a call while being in prison, and he actually realized the self while in prison. There are churches everywhere. It's all around you, so it can be a way, right? Yeah, sure. But also at the same time, it's kind of an obstacle, hurdle. Experiences are only experiences. Can it be an obstacle because in the end, because there's lots of things that go wrong in Christianity, and yet it feels real in the experience. So we have to focus on the experience rather than the teachings. Yes, I don't know much myself about Christianity, and I didn't really focus on the teachings, but rather the experiences. Okay. Something in me feels that it is a way to go through Christianity. I just don't want to miss it. Miss what exactly? Well, this very simple way of union, of unity. For you it seems easy, but for others it isn't. Well, it is our culture, so yeah, but I can feel that there's something to acknowledge and experience, even though it is only an experience, I know, and we can go through thousands of them. But how do we go beyond that, through that path? It was really through and by the heart and through the heart. Someone asked me once and was going through the Catholic path, and this person asked me, what do I do to pray? How do I do to pray? I told him, just by repeating Jesus, I could feel something happening in the body. That's it. And used to happen with Krishna too, actually. And because I felt very good doing that, and I really wanted back then to experience that wellness, that. So I did, again and again and again. And even if you go to, monks and nuns and monasteries, they have a lot of practices that make them feel very good, or even Muslims. Lots of them use this repetition of the name of mantras because it helps you stay focused and stabilized into this state of at least you're not caught up with the world and stories of the world. In India, they actually say that it's the easiest, the fastest, the easiest, and the safest way to realize the self. But it has to go through the heart. If it doesn't go through the heart, doesn't come from the heart, it's not going to work. On ne peut rien dire. On ne peut pas dire aux gens, voilà, on arrive avec un gros pavé de 500 pages, voilà, pour we can't tell people, just with, like a 500 pages book and, just follow this and you're going to have it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there's not one method that would be rightful for everyone. Just follow what you think is good for you. Feel is good for you. If you want to adore and worship, go to all the way. Some go.
Parce que le petit moi de l'adorateur est conservé parce qu'ils ont besoin de deux pour pouvoir.
Some worshippers keep this idea of two, of just to be able to keep something to worship. It's still they don't feel like they're worthy of being what they are worshipping.
un grand adorateur, Swami Ramdas, justement,
Swami Ramdas, a great worshipper
en Inde du Sud,
who I was with in South India,
constamment,
he was constantly,
avant qu'il considère que tout est rame et que tout est Dieu, avant il était dans une grotte pendant un certain temps.
he actually went to a cave for quite a while, and he was looking for the divine.
À un moment donné, il a eu cette réalisation intérieure.
And he
profonde, et là,
had this deep understanding,
and
he realized that the divine was everywhere.
Donc là,
coming out of this cave, realize that worshipping can be a trap if it is an exclusive worshipping. If you want to worship consciousness, really worship consciousness, which means worship consciousness beyond every forms. So at first we pick sacred forms. No need.
Ouais, mais à un moment donné, tu vas là, quasiment sûr, tu vas avoir l'élan d'adorer toute forme.
You will go through. At some point, you will have this impulse to actually worship everything.
Non, c'est pas la compassion là, ce que je te dis, c'est une méthode en soi.
It's not. I'm not talking about compassion. It's a method.
Qui vit aussi dans le sud de l'Inde, elle a réalisé le soi par la méthode.
Another Swami,
de l'adoration.
She realized the self through worshipping every forms, and she calls consciousness Papa.
Ils se sont rendus compte que Jésus
actually,
pas père,
historians realized that Jesus wasn't talking about the father, but actually about Papa, about Dad. So it was quite intimate, and it's very intimate the way he was talking about consciousness. It's just fun fact. So she kept on saying Papa about everything. So if I'm eating porridge, it is Papa. The spoon is Papa. The floor, I'm walking on Papa when I walk in the street. All is Papa. I'm actually laughing because I went through that practice too. You reject nothing. I can't do that on an intellectual level. It has to go through the heart. Yes, absolutely. Only the heart can see that. Jesus is quite clear about that. Before worshipping the divine and divinities, first make peace with your brother.
Non, il dit pose là tes offrandes. Il est très clair. Hein.
He says, leave your offering there at the altar and go. First make peace with your brother and then come and present your offering.
Ça a amené tout de suite à aimer son ennemi. Donc je dis, il y a des moyens habiles, et c'était pas par le mental, c'était par la pratique, ça a amené vraiment à aimer.
Ouais, c'est clair. Mais en fait, le message derrière ça, c'est que c'est la conscience.
The message behind it is the consciousness behind every forms, behind everyone. Yes, but through the mind, it wouldn't happen. It's not possible to understand that.
Mais disons que tant que tu...
Well, as long as it has to go through the heart to be able to understand and accept your enemies, isn't it? Yeah, we always go through the heart, always. The recognition that you and the other are one can't go through the mind. That's not possible. It's only the heart. The mind is a finite object, limited, so it is made for the relative level. I remember a friend who studied the theory of exegesis. He's been reading lots of scriptures. So, yes, I've had some understandings. And one day, he doesn't know why, but something in him told him to start only reading sentences of Jesus saying, in truth, I tell you. So he's done that, reading only all the sentences starting with, in truth, I tell you, and he's realized the self. And so when we asked him, what is it, that thing that inspired you? He said, I don't know, one morning he came up So he actually started reading, and he's done that for months, and realization happened. And it happened while reading Jesus saying, "In truth I tell you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." He read that, and enlightenment happened. Why did Jesus express himself in metaphors or images in an era where humans didn't have such a mind? Like, it wasn't easy for them, those ideas, those very deep ideas. How come he was using those kind of expressions? Lots of mystics go through parables or metaphors. It's quite easy to understand them today, but well, even back then it was. We were talking about an Egyptian text, scripture, not a scripture, a text on a building, and it was, of course, addressed to people living there, but it is understandable. It's very clear, actually. But it's not speaking to the mind, isn't it? No, it's not, indeed. But it is expressing the presence so much, it is so clear, it actually triggers understandings. But all those images and metaphors, lots of mystics are still speaking like that, because it actually catches something in us that is essential. It's not made to be understood and to talk to the mind, but the heart understands. The first trigger for the Buddha happened when he sees two peasants. One is carrying a bundle of wood, and the other one tells him, unload your burden. And it was a trigger to Buddha. And he actually understood, I might be carrying something myself. So when Jesus said, I came to this earth with a sword, and he talks about the son and the father and the daughter. So he was actually saying that family blood wasn't the most essential. Yes, it was more about the father taking the direction of the father to recognize what you are, rather than a family tree. Yeah, he says that again other times. When someone says to him, your mother is here. But again, on the relative level, he could have said, yes, this is my mother. But he was actually talking, certain sages rarely talk on a human level, but this is what they have to do. Some of them never go down to this manifested level. Some sages in Rishikesh always talk about the absolute, and if you come up to them and tell them about your personal story, they don't answer because it's not resonating with them. So someone telling Jesus, your mother is here, pure consciousness doesn't have a mother. It's meaningless to it. I don't know if you know Nairi Masaya, an Indian avatar from the Babaji lineage, who kept himself in a lotus position, in a total samadhi. And two yogis from the Himalayas, venerated yogis by a lot of people. They were said to have reached great enlightenment and understandings. So they come in front of Nairi Masaya, in this position like the Buddha. And those yogis talk to him, about all these experiences they have, and at some point they ask him, because he wasn't answering, he wasn't saying a word, and don't you have anything to say? And he answers, I don't know what you're talking about, all there is the one. So yes, it happens that some sages don't care about this personal story, and they just talk about and from the absolute. But we can also answer on every level. Some do, and all the levels at the same time. There's always around 3 to 4 different levels. You can answer a question depending on what perspective you're talking from, which is why sometimes it feels like sages are contradicting themselves, but it just depends on the level you're talking from.
Il y avait quelque chose qui voulait sortir tout à l'heure, mais je me souviens plus.
Pour revenir à ce matin, tu avais dit, juste avant d'aller déjeuner, manger c'est très mental.
You said something this morning about eating being very intellectual. Why?
Pourquoi? Parce qu'on mange par habitude.
Because we eat out of habit. This is what's interesting in what we were talking about this morning, related to prana, which is modifications and changes in the way you eat. What's interesting is it changes and it reaches a lot of conditioning that we might have. Food touches a lot of deep conditionings. So if you start and meddle with it, you can actually become aware of a lot of things. So to eat is an habit. Same way to think you are someone, you are a person, is a habit. Is a habit. We do realize that when we fast, first days it feels like it's hard, but after a few days, habits drop. And we can see there that those are just habits and conditionings. But how not to take myself as a person? I do realize, I do know. I can see I have this understanding. And well, you start with I have this understanding, so having is I have nothing. Yes, yeah, precisely. You have nothing. That's true. But is it wrong? Is it bad? Those are actually ancestral meditations to actually realize that we don't have anything, nothing is ours, starting with the body. Is it bad? If we stay in the mind, of course, it's very bad. Some sages say that try and think a lot about the death of the body, or before the birth. But I do think about that often. So how is it? Well, I do feel that this world is quite shitty, so not all the time, but yeah. But there is this calling towards death, but at the same time this idea of self-realization keeps me on going and on seeking. And the more we are here and now, the more ecstatic experiences happen, and realization is not an idea. It's you've said it yourself. The more we are here, the more whole it is. So you answer your own question: how do I liberate myself from the little me, from this me? The me is caught in a temporality. So if you're now, it's impossible for the me to keep going. But there is this force of habit that, for the mind to try and, and appear and grab things. But you just see and notice that, and you don't follow it, you don't go with it. You don't have any power on the thoughts that you have. it is important to understand that whatever appears, it's not because of you. You haven't done it. Nothing that appears is yours, including the body, the emotions, the physical body. Nothing is yours. All appear in you. So when you stop those movements of grasping, little by little there is a detachment that is appearing on its own. A great sage, Swami Shivananda, wrote something like 300 or 400 books. Someone come to him one day and say, I don't really like reading, I know you've written a lot, but can you make a shortcut for me? Do you have one or two sentences for me? And Swami Shivananda says instantly 2 words: attach, detach. Attach yourself to what you are really, consciousness, and detach yourself from all the perceptions and all fluctuations, all that appears and disappears. Attach to what is permanent and doesn't fluctuate, and detach yourself from what is always fluctuating, which doesn't mean that we don't have pleasures on this earth. It is important to remember that human joy has a place, always. Human happiness has a place, all the way, during this quest. Can you point towards what never fluctuates? Well, by essence, a direction moves. The only thing that we can point toward, if you keep on repeating, I am not, I am not, I am not. You might have seen that on other videos. Try and repeat, I am not, I am not, I am not. Inside, within yourself, there's a sort of force that is coming up, saying, I am. And it's certitude, obviousness, and that's it. There's a variant to this one. Try not to be, and you'll see that something in you can't not be. Try and get outside of now. Exit now, it's the same. And the more you try and exit now, the more the force is pushing you, saying, no, now is now, really? And that's it. That's all there is. You can't say anything about that, really. What you can do is contemplate how it is now, how is it where you can't not be? How is it where this, how is it this I am, really? How is it? What is it made of? And you can't add anything here. In yoga, there's a phase that is called tapas, which means austerity. And in India, they say that the greatest austerity is to stay here, in this I am, in this simplicity, in that in you that can't not be, this force that can't not be. And I say force, but it's just a word, it's for lack of a better word. And you just stay here, and to the mind it's very stern. The mind tries and fight it, can't accept this simplicity. Avadut in Sanskrit, which means naked. The mind can't accept this nakedness.
Et sans ça, est-ce qu'il pourrait y avoir le reste?
And without that, could the rest exist?
Là, si on regarde comment c'est le je suis, être.
If we look at this beingness, this consciousness, and when I say look, it's just for lack of a better word, but when we kind of apprehend that, try and have a look. The mind doesn't notice, doesn't take notice, but what would and what could exist without this consciousness being present?
Tout s'effondre comme un château de cartes.
Everything collapses like a house of cards. Without it, nothing else is. There's nothing left.
Tout à l'heure, tu parlais de la dissolution dans l'adoration.
You talked about dissolution in worshipping. It's something that questions me. Because it feels like I feel attracted, that I feel this attraction towards worshipping. Feels like two parts that want to join. I feel this attraction, this aspiration. Yeah, this is why we talk about being aspired or aspiring towards. I find it a bit weird, this phenomenon, to be drawn. You talk about disappearance or dissolution. What is being worshipped and the worshipper are merging. Yes. Well, it's a mystery to me. Even after the shift, consciousness keeps stays as a mystery. It's always going to be a mystery. But what's great is that you stop trying and understand this mystery, the whys and hows of this mystery. I can feel the call. I can feel a call right here. Well, that's the heart talking. It's gonna bring you up to the end. It's gonna. And what's funny is, have you chosen it? No, you haven't. Indeed. The mind wants to tries and make us believe that there's a time and that there is a continuity in the process of enlightenment. But no, I am the Alpha and Omega. It was there already before and it's going to be there after. It's always there during the whole path, the whole seeking. When this desire comes up, this impulse, it's already there. You've already reached the end line before even wanting it. It couldn't... If there is this aspiration, that means that you already know. It's a recognition and acknowledgement. Enlightenment is a recognition, indeed. It's only that. It's not a having.
C'est un avoir en moins.
De
croyances limitantes.
It is having less beliefs, less conditioning. Yeah.
Tu sais, même l'adoration et l'adoré.
Even worshipping and worshipper is also a story. It appears within something.
On a tendance à imaginer tout de suite
We tend to think
adoration et adoré, il va s'imaginer une entité là, une entité
the
là.
mind tends to think about, you know, a worshipper and a worshipping an object.
Les entités, l'espace entre les deux, tout ça, c'est ça
within what appears the worshipper, the worshipping, and the space between them two that the minds think exists. Within what everything appears, all of that. Within Papa.
Cette aspiration-là.
This aspiration.
Mais elle est séparée. Parce que,
it's separated yet. This is confusing to me. You've just pointed towards two. There's what appears within and what's there. Yes. This is the last. This is the king desire, the main desire. That's the only desire that is tolerated, so to speak, in India. It's this desire for enlightenment. This is the only desire that is. It is considered a benediction and not something bad in India. Yes, the wish and the desire to awaken this path of knowledge. And it's not something that is, you know, running after things in the world, but actually running towards infinite. Actually, it's running towards the infinite. This impulse, it's a current that will bring you directly to the goal. Whatever you do with your mind, you'll never be able to avoid this coming to unity. It's like a current, of a river current, and you just have to sit in the little boat and just wait for the end. And things will come up to you, and it will happen. You will feel things, you know, that will feel like right for you. And this is what is going to bring you unity, but it's really only a game. It is a love story that comes or goes from relationship to fusion or union, unity. And this is what human beings try to do with by coming close to what they like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm talking relationships, but also objects. This is what we keep on trying and get close to things we like. Food, women, cars, anything that we think and we like. I went through a worshipping path for a while, for years, and at the end, every time I had this motion towards, I was trying to grab something outside, and something inside me was saying, nope, I'm already here, it's already here. So it was preventing me or forbidding me to actually to pray for the divine, for instance, and it was saying, nope, it's already there. It felt like I was being told off by myself, so I had to stop, and I had to accept that it was here at some point. So the next step was to say stop, wasn't it? Yes. Stop to this impulse to look for, to seek in this exterior, divine, that would be outside. This idea of a source outside of yourself. How could there be a source of being outside of yourself? You are the source of being.
Vous êtes le point d'origine.
You are the origin point of this whole universe. It doesn't appear outside of you, it appears within you, inside you.
Sans vous, la conscience absolue,
Without you, consciousness, absolute consciousness, it couldn't be seen, all of that.
Donc le point de départ, c'est vous, et le point d'arrivée aussi.
Beginning point and the ending point is you. So when we ask for something, we ask ourselves every time. Yeah, of course. So there's no need to ask for something unless you want to play. Yeah, you can play with the relative. I had a period, a wishing period.
À ce moment-là, il ne me répondait plus trop à mes questions. Est-ce qu'on peut demander ceci à l'univers? Ouais, non, tu peux demander tout ce que tu veux.
Gerald wasn't answering a lot to me. You know, it's like, can I ask for this or that? Ask whatever you want. And the more you become aware, the more you see them realize themselves. It's helpful for faith. It happens and it appears for you to understand that. So there's this story of someone is asking for something and
ce moi fait des choses dans le monde du petit moi pour son plaisir. Mais en fait, tout ça, c'est de la mise en scène pour se rendre compte qu'il n'y a qu'un seul moi.
It is only a scenario to make you understand that whatever you ask for, it appears because it's you asking yourself. So to go through those wishes period can just help you, that make you trust yourself more. So it is always for yourself that you ask for things, and to yourself. Same with praying for the peace on this world is actually praying for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just notice that if you pray for peace, world peace, you are praying for yourself. There's no need to ask. Consciousness will actually make everything appear that will be perfect for us. You are actually making things appear for yourself. All those events that you go through to help you recognize what you are, yourself. And it's not to grow, it's not made so that you can grow. Consciousness doesn't grow.
Une
Sadhana.
Sadhana.
What is a sadhana?
Ouais.
Ça se dit sadhana.
Sadhana. Ouais.
Oui, sadhana.
Est-ce qu'il y a une sadhana? Tu veux dire un cheminement?
Une pratique.
De votre point de vue.
Il y a l'apparence. Il y a l'apparence de quelque chose qui se déroule.
Oh, is there really a sadhana? Well, a practice, a path. Yeah, well, there's the appearance of a practice and a path.
Il y a une pomme, tu vois. Tu vois une pomme.
All right.
Est-ce que
Here's an
le fait
apple.
que tu mettes
You see an apple.
un voile sur la pomme fait qu'il y a moins la pomme?
If you put a veil on top of the apple, does it make it less of an apple? No.
Non. Ouais, on est OK. La pomme est toujours là, même s'il y a un
The
voile sur la
apple
pomme.
apple is still here, even though
Donc la conscience est toujours la même.
the veil is, even though there's a veil on top of it. Same with consciousness.
Visible.
It just feels like the apple is less visible. You know, like is it red? Is it green? Is it right?
Donc c'est la même chose.
But the apple is here.
La conscience
It's
est
the same
toujours la
with
même.
consciousness. Consciousness is always the
Sur
same.
le plan relatif,
On the
effectivement,
relative level,
il y a un voile sur la pomme, quoi.
there's a
Donc,
veil on the apple.
Il y a l'apparence que
There's the appearance
c'est
of
caché, que la conscience
that
est
is
cachée,
hidden, that
mais
is
sur le plan
that
absolu,
the
la pomme est
consciousness
toujours
is hidden. But on the absolute
là.
standpoint, the apple is still
non,
here.
du point de vue
Consciousness is
absolu,
still
il y a
here.
pas de chemin, il y a
So,
pas de-
from the absolute standpoint, there's no such
relatif, il y a
thing as a
l'apparence
sadhana or a practice, a path. But
d'une
on the
sadhana,
relative
d'un
level,
dévoilement. Il y a
there's the
il y a l'apparence
appearance
d'un
of
dévoilement. Il y a
unveiling.
eu, avant ça, il y a
from
eu
the apple.
l'apparence d'un voile qui s'est posé.
And before
Et
that, there was
ensuite, il y
the
a quelque chose qui s'est dévoilé.
appearance of a veil
Souvent, on parle de la sadhana, mais
being put onto
on,
this apple. And there's the
on regarde pas
unveiling, the
précisément
appearance
la
of the
mécanique
unveiling.
de comment le voile s'est posé. Et
La sadhana, je me représentais ça comme une ou plusieurs pratiques.
I had in mind that a sadhana was different practices, yes,
Des pratiques.
one or
Mais ça a plusieurs
several
significations,
practices.
parce que ça signifie aussi réalisation, accomplissement.
It also means
etc.
realization
Après, il y
and
a, bon,
accomplissement.
La sadhana, elle peut être à la carte aussi. Hein.
But it can be, on the menu. You can invent your own sadhana.
choisissez le menu que vous voulez.
Tu vois, en Occident, il y a des sadhanas, elles sont, j'allais dire, à
for
part ce que font,
Westerners,
par exemple, certains ordres de moines, de sœurs.
some
Ça reste
monks
plutôt
and
soft.
sisters, they are quite
Voilà, des sadhanas avec
soft,
des tapas, donc des
soft
austérités, tout
practices.
ça, où ça peut pousser les
But
choses vraiment très loin.
some sadhanas
Ou
can go
avec des
very, very
efforts,
far
tout
to,
un tas de trucs, mais on
um,
n'est pas obligé de passer par une sadhana.
master the body, but we don't have to go through a sadhana. It's not mandatory. What would be the sadhana that you'd recommend?
Je reçois beaucoup de monde, mais je recommande jamais de
I
sadhana.
never recommend
Et des
any
fois, les gens me disent,
sadhanas.
ah, mais la sadhana que tu as pratiquée,
But the one, some people coming to me ask me, well,
éventuellement je peux la faire. Je lui dis, je sais pas du tout parce que je méditais
can
aussi,
I do
en
yours,
plein hiver,
your
à
sadhana?
-7, ou nuit,
I don't know
enfin,
because
je veux dire,
I've actually been
la sadhana, on la pousse
meditating
très- enfin, on la
naked
pousse très loin,
outside,
je sais pas
being
si
very
c'est
cold,
adapté, ça veut rien
-7,
dire,
10
quoi.
degrees.
Moi, c'est venu spontanément,
Really,
j'ai fait
to be honest, it
comme
doesn't
ça
mean
venait en moi,
anything.
quoi.
It's just it
Donc,
happened the way it
la
was
sadhana que j'ai pratiquée,
appearing
pas
in
forcément
me.
celle
I
pour
just
les autres. Enfin,
so the
ça
sadhana
peut
I
être
went
différent,
through,
quoi. Il
it's
faut essayer
not
de voir ce que l'élan
necessarily
du
what
cœur,
someone else
vous
should
dit
do.
quand il vous dit ah suis une
The,
sadhana,
the
parce que ça se trouve, il
impulse
vous
of the
dira tout le
heart,
contraire,
again, the heart
moi je
might
suis pas
tell you
sadhana,
just follow the.
tout va
I
bien,
just
tu
want to
vois,
go
c'est déjà
through
là,
a
et tout ça.
sadhana, then
Bon,
just
moi
do.
ça m'a dit bah fais-le, tout en étant conscient que j'étais pas obligé de le faire. Hein.
Something in me told me
Donc j'étais quand même assez
do that,
conscient
but
que
I was also
je
very
jouais
aware
en
that
faisant
was
la sadhana.
playing, that I didn't have to do it,
D'accord,
but I
voilà. Et
wanted
je
to.
l'ai
I
mené
wanted
entre
to
guillemets, j'allais
play
dire
with
jusqu'au
that.
bout, entre guillemets.
And quote
À un moment
unquote,
donné,
I
ça m'a
went
dit à
up to the
l'intérieur,
end of
arrête
it.
maintenant arrête de jouer là, c'est plus
And
la peine
at
de
some
jouer.
point, there was
La sadhana,
something
quoi,
in
tu
me
vois.
saying, okay, stop. No need to
Bon,
play
donc
with
j'ai arrêté,
sadhanas
ça
anymore.
aurait pu durer
So
3 ans, ça a duré une quinzaine d'années.
it could have
Voilà. Mais c'est
lasted
pas
for
une-
3
pas une
years, but it did
obligation,
for
hein.
15.
Je passais
But
aussi par
it's
les
again, it's not
mantras.
mandatory. I went
Voilà, je
through
prononçais tout ça, je
mantras.
passais par le pranayama,
I
donc les
went
exercices
through
de souffle,
pranayama.
très intensivement, hein, 4
It's
heures ou 7 heures
breathing
par jour, c'est
exercises,
le pranayama,
4 or
effectivement,
5
c'est
hours
pas
a
tout le monde en
day.
général qui fait ça, voilà.
Not
Mais
everyone
bon,
does
j'étais assez
that,
casse-cou, on va dire.
but I was a bit of a
Je le
daredevil,
conseille
so
pas forcément aux
I
gens
wouldn't
parce que
recommend
il y a
that
des
to
phénomènes quand
people
même qui se passent quand on
because
commence
there
à
are
pratiquer de
phenomena
façon
that are
intensive,
appearing when
même
you
au niveau
practice
du
something
corps
quite
physique.
intensely, even on the body
Il y
level.
avait des fois des
Sometimes
déclenchements de choses jusqu'au cerveau
things
où
would,
tu as l'impression, enfin,
start in the
t'imagines que
body
tu vas
up to
faire,
the,
j'allais dire, un
the
AVC ou
mind,
tu vois,
and
enfin,
you
il se
feel
passait
like
des
you
choses
might
quand
go
même,
through
quoi.
a stroke.
Donc je ne vais pas conseiller ce genre de
So
choses
I
aux
wouldn't
gens.
recommend those things to
Moi, je le
people.
faisais, bon voilà,
I was
parce que
going
j'avais
through
cet
that
élan-là,
because
quoi,
there
c'est
was
venu comme
this,
ça spontanément.
feeling and impulse. But again, a sadhana is not mandatory. You don't have to. So there was no masters that actually advised you to do that. No, it just appeared spontaneously. It is true that I had started a sadhana for 5 years, and I met a spiritual master that was living in France. That was, he wasn't showing himself much to the public, but he was recognized. He was very discreet, but very known. And so he actually appeared on my path just to confirm that I was on the right path, which is usually what happens with masters. It's just a confirmation. The presence manifesting through him was a confirmation for me that I was the path that I had not chosen, that had appeared, was the right one for me. But a sadhana is not. You don't have to do it. It's not mandatory. What about Pierre? Pretty much the same. I didn't follow any advice. I just meditated quite intensively. And what's funny is I met Gerald 5 or 6 years after. I didn't go through pranayama. It was more a worshipping path, but it was the same for you. Yeah, it was. But there was a moment where I realized, I understood that it wouldn't work with the mind. It wouldn't happen through the mind. So I'm just going to start and try to do everything with love. It is not humanly possible, but as much as I could. So there was this mantra in French that was creating for myself. Like I was repeating, I love you. So not openly to everyone, of course. But within myself, innerly. Because I actually could feel, like I said, I could feel things when I said that. If I wasn't feeling anything, if I hadn't been feeling things when I said that, I would have stopped. But I could see, I could feel that it was the path I should go through. I could see that things were dropping off me, and I was letting go of things. And I wasn't bored. I was this I love you was directed towards everything, even this nothing that we perceive in meditation. It was even I love you, this nothing, I love you boredom. And something else quite important, the only thing that you can work on is not what is appearing. You can't, like you said, the boredom you feel is not your fault, but the only thing you can change is the relationship you have with what's appearing. And when I was in this I love you with things, my relationship to things was so different. It was an absolute surrender, an absolute openness. It is as it is relationship, but it wasn't defeatist. So there was this relationship, very open, a very big yes to whatever was appearing. Whatever was appearing. It is important to understand that we can really only act on the relationship, but not onto what is appearing. You can't change others. You can't. Namaste. Bye.
Peut-être une ou deux questions.
You said something about to be aware of what has put on this veil before thinking of letting. What I was talking about is the mechanism. the adult has occulted how it was when he was a child. And to realize the self is really the state of a 3-month-old baby. So if you go there,
il y a plus qu'est-ce qu'il y a plus il y a plus grand chose d'ailleurs.
There's not. If you go there, you see that there's not much left. As a 3-month-old, there's no more this idea of I have to act this way to be recognized and have the love of. You don't think about what you should do to get something. You don't think about what is my role and my place in this world. There's not even the thought I think in French. There's not the weight of all this emotional story and life that has been lived. How can we go back in this space? It's not going back because we are already are there, but it's to see how this mechanic of the veil is being constructed, built. The illusion is reactualized every instant. So this is why meditation is a key, because it brings with it a degree of vigilance. All the practices, spiritual practices, even repeating Jesus or something else, anything else, any kind of worshipping, it brings with it a degree of vigilance. And this vigilance will help you notice and be aware of all the mechanisms and that you. Most people that have started meditating after a month, after a month they say, I have so many tensions, I don't understand. Well, it's always been here, you're just becoming aware of it. Or I'm angry all the time, or, well, you were already angry, you're becoming aware of it again. And all the emotional mechanisms, all the reflexes that are diffused, even before the emotion emerges. With meditation, you realize that the emotion comes up. First, you fall into it. Then you realize that there's a little bit of time where you can choose if you go with it or not. And then you don't even choose, you just let it pass. You don't have to express it. It is just, you become aware of it, you're aware of it. So meditation doesn't have to be posture, you don't have to be in certain posture. Yeah, of course, you can work, you can be walking, whatever the activities that you are having. Everything can be a meditation. So you can live your whole day while being in meditation. Yeah, absolutely. At first, it's requiring a sort of effort because it is going against the current that we are used to. So a sage said something like this path of same like when you're in a plane, when you're taking off, it is quite hard at first. The plane coming up you can feel that it's really fighting against the wind, and then you reach a point where you realize that it becomes way easier. Same with a car, or so this path of letting go of all the and going against this current, it asks for an effort, but at some point even the effort drops on itself, because you realize that you don't have any effort to be. There's no effort to do to be. But to be a very great spiritual character, now that's where there's a lot of effort to put on and put in. To maintain this image of a spiritual character, that is very tiring. That asks for a lot of effort. Also, something very important is to authorize ourselves to be vulnerable. It's very important, and Westerners are really, really bad with that. All our feelings that we've been through while being children, sadness, anger, we are never taught or you're never asked to to actually go and watch and see it. You're told, do not cry, do not be angry. We don't even know why. We don't have to do it, but do not move. Stay on this chair for 6 hours. Stay still. And it goes against our true nature, really. This is not the natural state of being and beingness, which is not a state. But even on the relative level, to authorize yourself to be vulnerable is way lighter than to actually carry this shell of being someone strong. So every time something appears that is uncomfortable, the very tiniest thing has to be seen and be. You have to be aware, and even just you can even say it to yourself in your mind, like, I feel, unsettled by this. And you'll see that just by doing that, I feel bad because I feel sad because this. And if you start really, if you carry it with and try and act as if nothing was bad, then consciousness will keep on, poking at you, saying, look at me, look at me. It's going to push more and more so that you can be aware. About emotions, we have to go all the way through so that we can see the root of it, but sometimes, an artistic emotion can quite overwhelming. An emotion, artistic emotion, do not confuse a sentiment from an emotion. Sentiment comes from beingness, like joy, compassion, marvel. Those are sentiment, not emotions. But yeah, we can create an emotion. We can cry from it. No, it's not an emotion. That's a sentiment. An emotion is puts you into an uncomfortable state. To cry is not necessarily uncomfortable. Mystics and saints do cry, and it's not about. It's just a perfect unity, and it's just manifesting itself through tears. That's all. So, I know I'm going through that. I have my eyes are tearing up a lot. My children don't really understand that, but it's just I'm good, but I go through tears. We let things be the way they are. It is welcomed de facto. There's no problem. It is also part of the functioning of this individuality. Maybe this organism is crying more than this one or this one. So we don't have to look for a meaning. No, there's no meaning to it. It can be simple tears that have nothing to do with an emotion. Saint Francis of Assisi was crying so much that he had actually problems, seeing problems, sight problems. He actually ended up blind because he was crying all the time. Sufi masters were also quite often, in quite blissful tears, and it was welcomed. So beauty and artistic touches something else, touches consciousness. Consciousness is not touched, but it reveals, it does reveal something. It is transmitting something from consciousness. Yep. We can see that our society is not made for that. You can't really cry during, a meeting or at work or. It's asking for an authenticity. Gerald used to say, repeated. It's important to be true, authentic, and sincere. And this is not something that you can't meet quite often in this society. This true, sincere, and authentic. But as much as we can to be true, sincere, and authentic is really important. If you can't, you can try and lie to yourself, but something will always come up. I know people that have been, dealing with with deep anxiety because they don't go and see and have a look. Someone came to me and because she hadn't yawned for years, and it was linked to belief that she wasn't allowed to rest, and we just went. And we went and we had a look, and for the first time in 10 years she actually yawned, and after that she couldn't stop. It was just connected to the fact that she wasn't allowing herself to be vulnerable. It is quite paradoxical, but we are absolutely free when we are absolutely vulnerable. We let life be as it is rather than try and control it. We were talking about children earlier on, and we try and break them, and because they have so much energy, and we try and make them stay still, and we give them pills. And reason why, what's going to happen and what's already happening, the scholar system is going to change. It will have to adapt. Consciousness
elle est révélée avec une intensité beaucoup plus.
Consciousness is being revealed with an intensity that is way more present than before, and so this scholar system doesn't fit anymore.
Des élèves en yoga donc qui sont parents.
Some yoga students have children, and some of them tell me that their children at 4 years old, they know that their scholar system with someone, a knower giving them knowledge. They already know at 4 years old that it's not what's going to help them realize what they are and be happy. That's why there's so many alternative schools. It feels like they are alternative, but in a few years it's going to be normal. It's going to be the new normal. One of my nephews, very young, says he hears and he learns that the Santa is an illusion, and he's watching his fathers and his parents. You've actually all lied to me. It's like, you've lied to me. My father tried to, no, but no, you actually lied to me. Children know. They know. Deep within, they all know everything already, which is why we need to find this children's state. Reason why there's no effort, it's already here. It is a strange perspective for life, this children perspective, with this very strange, ego thing that is building up. And then there's death, there's children, then there's the ego, then there's death. It's staggering, really. No, there's no death. There's still a belief. There's lots of beliefs behind that. You think that the state of the children is a state. It's not really a state. It's really what you are, and what you are doesn't disappear after the disappearance of the body, the physical body. To make it simple, and to come back to this metaphor of water on the ocean, there's an appearance of a wave, a fictitious me, and then the wave disappears, and consciousness realizes itself again back. It hasn't changed water. There's the appearance of a belief in someone, but it just dissolves on its own. I'm surprised I've even asked the question.